Hello everyone and welcome to this SFIA 8 beta launch webinar. My name is Grant Nicholson. I'm an enthusiastic user of SFIA and a member of the SFIA Design Authority. And this is the first of 3 global webinars staggered to be convenient for different time zones around the planet. In this session, we're going to be using the Q&A feature in Zoom. So if you have any questions you'd like to raise, please use that feature. We may well get many more questions than we can answer in this session. And so those that we are not able to answer, we will queue those up and answer them and send them out after the webinar is finished. And we will also do the same with the recording. So this session is being recorded. And we will distribute the recording of this session after as well, make it available for people to catch up on what they may have missed. So without further ado, let's get in and find out a little bit more about what's coming in SFIA 8. And I might hand over to Ian Seward.
Thanks, Grant. First, let me introduce the Design Authority. We have Louise Smith from Australia, we have Daniel Merriott from New Zealand, Ralph Gockel from Germany, Miroslav Pavlovic from Chile, Matthew Burrows from the UK. We have Peter Leather, our Update Manager. We have Grant Nicholson from the Digital Transformation Agency in Australia, and we have Andy Thompson, the Chair of the SFIA Council. We have a varied audience as ever on these. Some are indeed SFIA experts and maybe long-term users of SFIA. Some are relatively new to SFIA. And of course, there are some people who attend are either thinking about using SFIA or just wants to know what the SFIA Foundation is doing. This webinar is intended to provide a summary of the SFIA 8 update activity, and also to provide links and enable you to find the elements within SFIA 8 so that you can, in SFIA 8 beta, so that you can provide feedback and comment. This is not a deep dive into individual change requests or indeed into individual content. We may in fact run some follow-up sessions to do just that. So while it will also touch on additional SFIA assets for the purposes of illustration and the wider application of SFIA, the focus is intended to be informative about SFIA 8 and enable you to provide comment during the beta period. So we'll move on to briefly introduce the update process. SFIA has a very long history, but we actually update every 3 years. Any longer than a 3-year period and things begin to get stale in an industry that is changing ever more rapidly. So this is part of our 3-year update cycle, and the SFIA story is one of evolution. So SFIA 8 builds on what has gone on in the last 20 years. And specifically, SFIA 8 is an update to what is currently in use, SFIA version 7. Over the years, we've provided more and more support to the global ecosystem. And in particular, we've responded to industry developments. We've responded to the themes that industry is interested in, built the infrastructure to support the global ecosystem, linked to over 40 bodies of knowledge, developed SFIA views to help navigate in different environments, and we've provided usage guidance and collaborated with many organizations, sector bodies, and other frameworks. But in every update, we have returned to the context for SFIA to ensure that each release of SFIA continues to support industry and what they want to do with regards to developing their skills and competency needs. We've established a global footprint, and SFIA is witnessing more and more engagement from people around the world, all wishing to contribute to SFIA. And that really does put us in a very strong position. So moving on to the consultation process. where we are is just at the point of launching our beta release. Essentially, what we do in consultation is we find out what industry wants. We work out what the options for SFIA are, and then we check back with industry through test and the beta release. When we find out what industry wants, we focus on themes, industry workshops. A number of those were held in Australia and in the UK primarily. We have direct input from industry end users, and we listen to various industry bodies. Input can come in through a number of sources, including the SFIA Council, through contacts via the SFIA Design Authority, of course, and also from learning from experiences with SFIA 7. And there is the formal mechanism of change requests, which very often deal with specific components that need to be updated. In working out what the options are for SFIA, it could be that there is a change to the SFIA framework, and we'll be presenting proposals for that in this session. It might be a development of a SFIA view, and we'll present a couple of those in this session too. And it might be developing SFIA guidance material. And in some instances, we might not actually do anything with a suggestion, and we'll generally try and explain why. The key element to this is that SFIA is built by the industry, for the industry, by a bunch of volunteers all around the world who come together and contribute their time, sometimes formalized into working groups. But the role of the Design Authority, which is a global group, is to ensure the design principles of SFIA are met and to ensure that there is consistency across the work that we do. So that's the consultation process. Let's take a look at our timeline. So where we are is at the end of June. We have been working on SFIA for around 14, 15 months. And in the last few months, much of that has come together to the point where we have a beta release for SFIA 8. There'll be now a time whilst people can review what we have and can provide feedback on that. We do want feedback. We want you to tell us what you like about the SFIA 8 beta, and we want you to tell us what you don't like. Please do, if you like something particularly, make a point of letting us know, because we will act on the feedback we get. We will now be working on many of the other activities that we need to do in order to address the final release. That's to do with the navigation of elements within SFIA. We have to produce the materials that we are going to be finally releasing. We have to kick off the translations. We now translate into 11 languages at SFIA 7. We have 2 more in preparation as well. So SFIA 8 will be translated into 13 languages, and maybe more if there is a requirement. It is still our intention to release SFIA 8 formally in September. And so we have a period now whilst people can review the beta, and we will be acting, as I said, on that feedback and indeed working on other aspects of the SFIA assets. In the middle of August, we will lock down what we have and do the finalizing, when we will then release the final version. So moving on to the purpose of the beta. In many ways, the purpose of the beta is fairly obvious. We want your feedback. As I mentioned, we want you to tell us what you like and what you don't like. There are some elements where the scope of SFIA has changed, has increased. We have changed content, and we have a number of individual skills, some of which are new, and we have reviewed the whole of the framework for a number of themes, including readability. There's obviously the proofreading, spelling, grammar, and punctuation to check, but in essence, we want to know what you think of SFIA 8 beta. The other purpose of it is to provide early sight of what SFIA 8 will be for everyone. in the past, there was a period of lockdown whilst we made SFIA 8 available, SFIA new version available, but we want to make sure that everyone has access to that. And whilst we've provided visibility over the last 14, 15 months or so, this is the first time that the whole framework has been available for people to look at. So employers, the SFIA partners, and indeed other users may want to use this beta as a means to plan what they do with their next version of SFIA adoption. But in essence, it's there to be seen and reviewed. One thing to just be aware of is that the purpose of the beta is to get your feedback. And so some skills or features that we've put in the beta may be modified prior to launch. And I guess it's possible that some of those items may not actually be released if the industry tells us that that's not what they want. So at that point, I will hand over to Peter Leather, our update manager. His role has been to manage the update of SFIA, and in particular, pulling together all the work of the volunteers and working groups into this. When it comes to providing the feedback, there are a number of ways you can do this, and the obvious one is to email Peter at updates@sfiaonline.org. You can indeed raise change requests, but only at this stage, please, against the beta. And you can provide detailed comments on, for example, a Word document that will be made available, so that it's probably easier to edit that if there are simple typos, grammar, or rewording. And again, email that back to updates@sfia-online.org. We do plan to have a few deep dive web meetings in the meantime, but now we'll go on to talk specifically about the particular updates to SFIA and what is SFIA 8 beta. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Ian. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just to reiterate what Ian said, very keen to get feedback at whatever level, and I will try and organise some of it. Last time round, we had some really generous volunteers who helped proofread and caught lots of typos and grammars and things like errors and things like that. So I'll try and organise that again. But we'd also like just to explore areas of your own interest, looking through the material in a fairly unstructured way, just trying to find out what's in there, what you like and what you don't like, and what we can the type of improvements we've been making. Also very keen that you ask questions on this webinar, because we're doing 2 more. So there's things we're missing out and not telling you on this webinar that you think we should be saying. That might be helpful, that we can add those to the others we do or follow up. Now, for the first couple of slides, I'm going to just expand on this theme of evolution, not revolution. So what we've always done with SFIA is try and make each version recognizably similar to the previous one. And so over time, over the 20 years, we can see SFIA looks quite different, but between each release, we have a lot of people using SFIA, so we need to make it a nice steady progression. And the slides I've got are going to talk about the core content, so the skills and skill descriptions, and then also what we've done with readability, and trying to position them as evolution in what we're doing. What we'll see, there's quite a new, a relatively large number of new skills being proposed, and that can look a bit like, that must be quite revolutionary. But this diagram here is just trying to illustrate what's actually happening with SFIA is that there's a number of parts of the industry which may not be directly covered by SFIA 7, but people in those parts like SFIA, like the way it's worked, and say, well, some of the skills you've got work for us, but we could do with some extras just to cover everything that we do. So they're a sort of a bubble poking out from SFIA 7 that says, let's use what you've got already, but can you expand and help us out with some of the areas and the skills and competencies that are really key to us and how we operate. Some of those can feel a little bit, not too much overlap, like the new ones we've got around computational science. That's quite a new area for SFIA, but we had groups talking with them, and the people who are operate in that professional field and saying, yes, we think what you're doing can be mapped into SFIA. The 7 levels will work for you. There's some skills in SFIA that you will find useful, but let's expand and cover the areas that you specialize in. What that means in terms of the framework and existing users is that there will be some skills in SFIA that are not of general interest. But what we've seen over time is we add things in and people start to get attracted to that. And over time, SFIA grows and we have more and more people interested in using SFIA, which becomes a virtuous circle for how we operate. Round the other side of the diagram, there's other ones like the data science and the information security one, where there's a much larger overlap. But again, where we may be saying with traditional end user security organizations, they were quite happy with what's in SFIA or wanted some refinements. But there are some very specialized security organizations who would like to use SFIA, and we have then tried to expand what we've got in SFIA to help them and to bring them into the model. And in their shoes, and the data science ones as well, it makes sense to have one framework that covers all their needs rather than having to dip into other frameworks and try and map levels and structures and things like that. So that's the sort of the evolution around the outside and pushing outwards from SFIA 7. Internally, we do get some evolution which says we may have some skills in SFIA that are, as time progresses, we see working practices and roles and jobs maturing. And so where we may have had one skill that covers 2 dimensions and could say we could cover it previously with one skill, it actually makes sense to bubble things out. And the example we've got is that we want to support people working in personal data protection, the privacy area. That was somewhat subsumed within a skill called information governance, but if we can bring it out, it can be used by more roles than just the people who did information governance. So that's another type of evolution we have in the space. And then finally, the other one we've got is a sort of merging of skills. So the top one there, we've got IT infrastructure and a skill in SFIA 7 called system software. And actually, when we're looking at the types of activities that are covered and how working practices have changed, there seems to be a coming together of those skills. So what we're proposing is maybe that we can subsume system software within the skill called IT infrastructure. So that's the type of thing you see. The unattached bubbles are kind of saying in the future, SFIA 8, SFIA 9, there's other stuff out there that we think will start to coalesce as industry boundaries change. And in fact, some of the change requests that I've only recently marked down as deferred, we're saying actually we should keep an eye on those things. It's probably not the right time now to bring them into SFIA, but there's no doubt that those things will start to appear into SFIA. So that's the evolution around the content. And then the readability. Now, this is something we don't typically do every time, but for a number of reasons, it was a real opportunity to look into the scope of what's in SFIA in terms of how the skills are presented and written. So we made a big effort to try and improve the English used, and by improving the English, we help the translations as well. And what we've done is trying to, using some of the principles of good web design as well as good how to write good English, restructuring the content, reordering some of the skills so that the most important sentence comes first, making much shorter sentences. We had some very, very long sentences in SFIA previously. I think 1 or 2 were over 50 words long. So what we've done is shorten the maximum sentence lengths quite dramatically there. And as I'll go through, you'll see that this has some side benefits in terms of how we can structure the website and how we can help people see what's in SFIA and help them understand and navigate around. What we haven't done with readability is try and dumb down any of the terminology. That is one thing that people really like about SFIA. It speaks the language of industry. So we haven't said it has to be language that is used by the general public. It's actually stuff that would be recognized to industry professionals. So that stays the same. We also recognize SFIA is used in so many different ways by so many different organizations, whether in their own internal HR practices, skills assessments, tools, recruitment, that we have to retain that flexibility. So that's been a key focus for us as well. So just to expand on that readability. So what I've got here is the web page for SFIA 7 and how it's structured at the moment, and just highlighting some of the features we have around there. And in terms of evolution, when we go to SFIA 8, it looks like that. So I'll try and do that not too quickly, but essentially what we're saying, you know, yes, we have restructured, but it is recognizably the same. And the big difference is when we look at that big first sentence for this one's systems design, sorry, the first paragraph, we've actually split that out and tried to make it something a bit more manageable. And we've done that in two ways. So we've looked at that first paragraph that's attached to all the skills and said what we could really find really helpful if we can come up with a short, concise sentence. And we've gone for a maximum of 20 words that describes what data modeling and design is. So that helps the users who are looking through the skills, trying to work what is this applicable to me. I can read the name data modeling design, and previously would have had to read 3 or 4 fairly lengthy sentences. We're saying now in one short sentence you can understand what is meant by data modeling design for SFIA. But we didn't want to lose all the content. That content, that first overall skill description, had lots of useful stuff which explained the scope of what was in data modeling design, and that helps people decide whether, you know, is this the right stuff for me, or I'm looking for a particular term or a particular use of the skills I have. So we're now putting that into what we've called guidance notes. So this is, we hope, quite a subtle change, but something that will have quite a big impact in how people can use SFIA, and particularly important for both new users who can then have you know, a quick entry point, a quick understanding. But once you're familiar with SFIA, by having less content, for example, in that first sentence, you can decide that you don't need the guidance notes. So if you're putting this into your own tools or your own documents, you can drop that and say, we just need the shorter sentence. So that's part of the example I give around flexibility. So that's stuff around the readability. As a side effect, and this wasn't quite what we're aiming for as a design thing, but it's a useful side effect. What I've got on screen here is some small simulating some mobile devices and saying, actually, look, what we can do is by having that short sentence for every single skill, we can actually improve the readability of the old framework by having the skill name plus that short description side by side. So if you're browsing through the A to Z list, and that is one of the most popular ways that people browse SFIA on the website, we can see that, so that they can see not just the name, but also that short description and help to see exactly what they're doing and what they're looking for. Now, that will not just be applicable for the SFIA website. I think there's many uses that SFIA users will be able to make use of that facility or that sort of opportunity to make it easier to browse what's in SFIA. So as we potentially get more skills in SFIA, the need to make it easy to navigate and browse SFIA, you know, increases as well. So that's sort of aligned with that growth of SFIA into other areas. Right, I'm going to start getting into some content. Before I do that, just give you a summary of what's in SFIA 8. I'll do the readability side first, so that's the right-hand side. So we've added guidance notes. I've mentioned that already. Some guidance notes are lengthier than others. That would be useful to get some feedback on when you're looking through those, and you know, pick on skills that you know or skills that you don't know and see how helpful the guidance notes are. Most of the content of the guidance notes is already in the framework. We've just reformatted it. But for some skills, we have added some, you know, additional guidance. For example, in some areas where we know from feedback from SFIA users that there's some skills that could you know, easily misapplied, let's say it that way around, and this helps people to understand, you know, how the framework is intended to be applied for certain skills. So give them some extra information that helps with that. As I mentioned before, we had lots of very long sentences, so we have we had a 30+ words was the sort of limit, so they've all been removed. There's no sentences above 30 words, and most sentences greater than 20 words have been restructured as well. So there's not many, or not a high percentage of sentences more than 20 words. So you will see that. That's quite noticeable, I think, in terms of the length of some of the skill descriptions, and the words, the sentences are easier to read and easier to translate. On the left-hand side, so in terms of the core content, so we have got a net 18 skills plus 18, so that's 23 additional skills and 5 skills replaced. We've also renamed 5 skills to reflect current terminology, and we've restructured. And what I mean by restructured is either take out some levels or add levels, so something more a bigger change than just rewriting skills. But essentially it would mean, you know, a similar skill, but with just added levels or levels moved into that area. And then overall that gives us a 24 levels added and 5 moved or replaced. So I think that is, you know, it's a good number of changes, but it's still back in the, you know, it's in evolution from where we were for all the reasons we said before. So what I wanted to do, I won't go through all of these because you'll be able to get the slides, but just give you a flavour for some of the changes, and I will, I'll give you a chance to read these as well without me reading them out, everything that's on the screen. But we've mentioned the computational science already. Now this is an interesting area with some very specialist applications, and you know, we hope this will be a growth area for SFIA, that we can get the scientific community attracted to SFIA because they can see skills that really resonate with them and start to explore the rest of the framework. And I guess an example where in the early days of SFIA, the use of SFIA might have been for the people who were putting the computers on the desks as a scientist and helping look after their networks and technology. So it's an expansion that says we can do that, but also, you know, the scientists using those computers for their own applications can use SFIA as well. So it's a bringing together of that. Data science, there's definitely this blurring. So some organizations we've talked to, you know, data science is very much not an IT skill. They wouldn't like to be considered as that. And they're very much business focused on commercial opportunities of data. But what we can do, again, is build on the structures of SFIA and harmonize some of the skills that they might see that they would use in SFIA with some of the skills that they use that they can't find in SFIA. So sort of try and build on this and bring things together. The other thing with data science is the spread of machine learning, and so we wanted to bring that out as something separate that people could really recognize in SFIA and find ways of using that. I've mentioned security already. That's similar to the data science one, but there's some really specialist skills in security that, again, I wouldn't think many end user organizations will be picking up on, but there's a number of organizations we've spoken to have been very keen to help us develop SFIA in that direction. And so I think that's a real enhancement to what we've got in the whole field of information security and cybersecurity. The business analysis one gives another type of change we've got there. So the view from the BAs that we were speaking to saying that they saw the skill currently SFIA was more describing their role, and so it had a number of dimensions within it. And we did some investigation into that and said, well, actually, when the BAs are trying to explain what they do, if they just say we do business analysis, then that doesn't really enlighten people. And when they're looking to, you know, pitch their role and put their skills against their job descriptions, you know, it doesn't help just saying we just do business analysis. Equally, when it comes to personal development, you know, within that single business analysis skill in SFIA, there are a number of dimensions that we can actually split out and help them get a bit more granular in terms of what they're doing and how they could develop. So that's what that one was about. The other two on the screen are probably quite distinct ones. I'll just leave those for now in the interest of time. But if you're interested, please ask the question. Now, another big area we looked at was the whole thing around managing skills and people. And now this is obviously a huge area for the industry in terms of skills gaps. And for as long as SFIA has been around, you know, the interest in skills gaps has been there. Over the last few years, there's much more interest in how people are managed and how you can motivate people, how you can help them self-organize. So a definite, you know, quite a change in being a manager-led profession to being actually, we need people who are actually willing and able to think for themselves and take decisions on how teams are operating, how to prioritize their own work. And that goes along with not just the recent 18 months or so. It's actually, you know, we want to have an experience, because we're trying to attract talent to our organizations. We want to give them experience that they say they want to work for us. So this idea of focus on people who can provide a good employee experience is something we've tried to explore. So that the first three there kind of, so there will be many people who use SFIA say, well, that's not what we do. You know, that's something that our HR colleagues do or other roles do. Now, the beauty of SFIA is if those aren't of interest to you, you don't have to use them. We're putting them out there and hoping that people who find that useful will use them, but it's not, you know, it's not any obligation that if you're going to do a skills mapping for a manager, you need to use these skills. It's entirely how you look at your organization and what you're trying to do and the context that you're doing with the people you work with to decide how useful they might be. This would be a really useful area to deep dive in, so I will be keen to do that if people are willing to spend some time and help us look through the depth of those skills in terms of how they might play out in the workplace. Digital badging, digital credentials, that's an area that's taken off enormously over the last few years. So we looked at that skill and we did wonder about, you know, is that too niche? But given its closeness to the subject matter of SFIA in terms of skills, it felt it was sensible to let's put that in there and see if we can actually encourage people who are looking at SFIA. It's likely some people looking at SFIA would be interested in badging in credentials anyway. So let's put that in there and see if we can actually you know, map what the industry's doing there and try and help describe what good skills and competencies look like in that area. I will mention briefly the last two. So we had a skill called business administration. Now, it's definitely not a technical skill, but it's one that everyone will recognize as being a real key enabler to how technology teams and others operate. So we've added that in there. It will be quite generic in its nature, but feedback on that would be really useful. And it's worth noting that we haven't just made that a very low level admin skill. We recognize there's roles out there in the industry who are supporting the executives in organizations, and that is a skill I think that may well resonate with a number of roles that work in and around technology. So that's why that one's in there. And the teaching area, again, this is mainly for academic institutions, but it was felt that the way the skill was worded made it hard to distinguish between roles who did teaching and subject formation, and I guess more roles who just concentrated on doing teaching. We also wanted to make sure we made a clear distinction between teaching and other learning and development skills that are in SFIA. So those are the headline areas. Kind of just check in. Is there any questions that we need to answer at this stage, Grant? And
there are a few questions coming along about how to get involved with things, and we'll just reiterate that you can contact the design authority through the updates at SFIA email address. Did you want to mention any more about that, Peter?
Yes, if I hadn't run out of time, I would have loved to have said, you know, the first people and skills workshop is on Tuesday, whenever, but we're going to have to play a bit of catch up. But what would be really helpful if people are interested in any of the areas, to be honest, but I don't want to lead the horses and tell you the areas that I'm interested in, but if you are interested in helping, please drop me a note at that update at on my email address that we had earlier on, and that gives me a sense of how many people and how we might do it. We will touch on this at the end of the presentation as well. And we'll also touch on where to find this stuff. Tom, I've just spotted your question there. So let me continue. So we have a interesting dimension that we've added into SFIA 8. And thanks to Penny and Phil, I think they're on the call. They've done some brilliant work on this for us. And as Ian mentioned, we are really reliant on volunteers to drive this, and the amount of volunteer effort that we get is fantastic. Now, what we've been looking at, we started off, I think it was from a workshop in Australia back in the early days, 14 months ago, which said about the treatment of behaviours or soft skills in SFIA. And what Penny and Phil have done, and with help from others, and they've shared the work as we've been going, is to come up with an approach that says, we think within the existing SFIA level of responsibilities and the generic attributes, we have really good stuff that describes behaviours. But in order to help people see that, we need to provide another angle in how you look at those. And on the website now is a document which has been positioned as a glossary, which explains where those behavioural factors are to be found. And it kind of, if you think about sort of twist the levels of responsibilities around and takes a different view at them, and it's really revealing and a really powerful document we've got. What we are working on is how we're going to put this into the framework, how closely attached it will be, or will it be something that is an optional part that people can look at as and when they require it. In terms of the sort of idea of evolution, not revolution, we think this is going to be really helpful for people, mainly small, medium-sized organisations that don't have their own in-house competency behavioural frameworks, but would like to use SFIA for that space, and this will really help position that. And the impact of the stuff on the screen there is on the left-hand side is the things you will recognise: autonomy, influence, complexity, that we've already got in the generics. And what we've really helped as well with this work that Penny and Phil have done for us is to highlight gaps and areas we can improve those generics as well. So this is something to watch this space. And if you are interested, the paper is on the website, and it would be good to get feedback and help in taking that forward. Ian, if I've missed anything on that one, let me know, or you can pick it up as we go through. Right, finally, on here, the change log. Now, this is going to be the source for those who are interested in finding out what the changes are. Now, this was an idea I had. We would previously had this change log, but very similar, to be honest. But it was kind of behind the scenes and helped me track what's happening in SFIA 7. And I started using it in SFIA 8 and thought, why not share this with everyone and give a chance for people to see, I guess, the inner workings. Now, not everyone will be interested in this level. I appreciate that. But what we've got within this change log that you can access from the website is a status of the changes. So it's kind of going on every skill in SFIA 7 and saying what's happening to it, what scale of change is happening to that, and summary, why is it happening? We've got lots of change requests. We've got work that we did in the design authority, so I can't summarize all that into one cell on a spreadsheet, but I've done my best effort there to just orientate people to that. And then on the right-hand side of the spreadsheet is something that ended up looking like a big game of Tetris, but what it was, again, just helped me track, was to look at the scale of change that each component of the SFIA framework had. So it may have been that we'd changed the content, we'd changed the readability, we'd deleted a level, we'd added a new one. And that's what I've tried to work through on that. And there's also a piece that we've got for helping translators or other people who might be looking to work with the framework. My best guess about how likely this is to change over the beta period. And that's only a finger in the air. And it's probably a personal view that says, I'm not quite sure that we've got that one finally nailed. So that one might change. I could be completely wrong. I could underestimate or overestimate, but again, take it in that spirit. This is a community activity, so I thought, share what we've got, and let you see what's in there. If any of the stuff you're seeing there sparks any questions, please let me know, and it will either be my fault for having miswritten something or misconstrued something. It was a manual list, so there's no clever link between this and the framework itself, so there could easily be some keying errors as well, so don't hesitate to get in touch. And on the status side, so I guess there's three broad things that could happen. So we've got a number that have no real changes to the content, so the examples at the top half of the screen have lots of activity in the blue part of the log, but nothing happening around the green side. Others have content changes and readability changes, and then we've got the other part, which is the new skills coming in. Now, for them, the readability doesn't make much sense because we've started from fresh, but we've added guidance notes to all of those, and you can see whether it's an entirely new skill or something's been split out of another area as well. Again, I've tried to link back to the change requests. Some of the change requests are numerous, so they're not necessarily in one place only. And I can see some gaps there that I should go back and fill as well. Okay, so that helps you track if you want to get into the detail. So I'm guessing there might be the different ways for you to tackle that. All I'm really asking is that people take the time exploring areas that they think they can help and give some feedback on. And finally, having looked on that change log, or when you're browsing it, we have a nice little tick box that is not foolproof, but it does help give a scale of how much change has happened. So you can click the box, you can see what's changed from SFIA 7 to SFIA 8. Some of the changes, mainly because of the readability, where sentences have been shifted around, they can look quite messy. So you'll have to bear with that. It's similar to Word. When you're looking at changes done in Word, sometimes it's easy not to look at the green and red text and take it off, but it will help for some, and hopefully it's a useful thing to have. So there's a little tick box at the left hand side which helps you do that. Right. Okay. I'm going to try and finish in 7 minutes, so let me keep going. Now we have mentioned earlier the sort of tools and resources. So over time, and Ian's initial slide had that growth of this ecosystem of we're adding more and more things around the core framework. And it's worth saying we're adding them not just for the fun of it, it's because this is a community-led thing and we get lots of requests saying it would be helpful if, or could you explain a bit more about how this works? So we try and get the community to help us build these for their own use and for future and current users of SFIA. So what we've had previously is the core framework, the skills and the level of responsibilities, and really valuable stuff that is, and people find that useful to use. But what we've started to add is different ways of accessing that, so that we can see that to help people navigate around it, to help people draw out some of the information that's in there, to help people apply it in certain ways, we can start to add some content. Now we're very keen that there's a separation between the data layers, I've called it there, which is the core framework, and the presentation layer, so how we actually look at it and see it. There is a difference between those, and we can develop things in the presentation layer which don't impact on that core SFIA framework. Now, of course, other organizations, end users, employers, tools providers, individuals will also have their different ways of using the framework. So much of what we've got in that presentation layer is actually within the SFIA Foundation, so it'll be on the website and the SFIA Foundation documents. But we encourage innovation in all sorts of areas, and so we see lots of stuff around the place, people using it in their own particular ways. So again, it's great to hear about those, and we can share those. So SFIA Foundation is not the only one to add these, these additional ways of using SFIA into it. So I'm just going to pick on some of these, because what we've also found is as we go through the updates. So give a couple of examples. When we were looking at SFIA 7 for things like security, service management, and governance and the BA stuff, it's useful to be able to say, look, there's industry frameworks out there that we can do a gap analysis against. If this is how they describe things, how does SFIA support that? Now, in the past, this work has happened in the background, but not necessarily been shared. It's been done part of the analysis work of SFIA Update. So what we're trying to do is just to say, well, if we've done that work and it's suitable and appropriate, we can share it. And then we've got a valuable resource that can be reused beyond the life of the update. So much of the work we've done in security has been mapping to existing material, as well as input from security professionals. So we will update that. We did a mapping to SFIA 7. We've added skills for SFIA 8, and then we can publish the new mapping, which will be against SFIA 8. And that gives a nice snowball effect of things growing and enhancing what we've got. The views, so the top layer there, as we add more skills into SFIA, it's helpful for people to see, actually, do I need to be worried about those? Do I need to be concerned about that? Do I need to be interested in those? So the views provide a way of saying, well, if I am looking at it from a dimension of DevOps or security or data science, or I'm a mainstream IT organization, what is it in SFIA that I need to be looking at? Now, the SFIA view started last time round with SFIA 7, and I remember presenting, they were just an idea on a slide, there were nothing more. But since then, we've built functionality in the website that enables us to display the views in the same way that you look at the full framework. You can actually look at subsets of it. So very interested in people who are interested in doing more in that space. And having had some SFIA 7 views, we can now update those for SFIA 8. So again, we're sort of growing the content. The related skills, that's a very simple approach which we've added to the website and is really helpful for navigating around. We can see from the website stats that lots of people come directly to skills. They don't navigate in. So that's Google taking them to a particular skill, or it's a particular skill they know about. So they don't go through a top-down menu. They just arrive on the site on a particular SFIA skill. So if you're looking at one SFIA skill and you haven't arrived at it via a menu, you don't necessarily know the context of where that sits. So what we can provide with that related skills is a navigation horizontally around the framework to areas that might be of interest or are of interest. And I will just mention one more, which is a really interesting piece of work, which we've had demands to have these. Can you just tell us what skills apply for certain roles? And we have resisted that over time, because really helpful that people take the time and think it through themselves, or use the expertise we've got within the SFIA community to build their own skills profiles of what are the skills you expect to see for a software developer or a project manager or an architect. But we have started to grow stuff based on what industry is sharing with us. And by looking at some of that material, we can then say, look, this is a starting point. And I'll give you an example of that as we go forward, but that's something that is a big step forward for us. Now on the views, I won't go through the detail of these, but this is on the website accessible. But as an example, we can compare what you might look at SFIA 8 if you're looking at it through the lens of information and cybersecurity, or if you're looking at it through the lens of I'm interested in enterprise IT. So it's the same skills mapped in a different way. We can give them a different category name or a familiar category name. The number of skills in the views will change. So we're shaping up to say, in security, we think these are the ones that are important. In the security world, what we've mapped here is not just the skills for security professionals, but also, for example, what skills might be used to ensure secure software development and that your infrastructure is secure. So we've got different ways of looking at the same information. So I think that's a real key thing for flexibility and for helping people navigate what's in SFIA. And then this was the example I was given around the role profiles, the skills profiles. So for this example here, we've got a data science set. Now we are not being prescriptive here. What we're trying to do is just to give a quick start way for people to saying, you know, I can see Sophia's got loads of stuff, but I'm interested in the data science roles. So here's some examples of what you might look at. We're not recommending job titles. The industry is full of its own job titles, and you know that we don't want to be seen as trying to prescribe that. So give us some examples, but there will be lots of other ones as well. Given a very brief description of what might be covered there, but the real intent is just to give people a start and get them interested in working with this. At all times, we recognise this is a task that should be done not by just copy and pasting what we've put on the website. And if you go to this page, you'll see there's lots of ideas or examples on how to do this and how not to do it, and how to take advantage of you know, expertise and training that we've got around in the community to do this. And on the right-hand side, that's the roles that we've got mapped in there at the moment. This is an area I think we can grow. So again, feedback on this, how useful it is, and whether you can help to expand that would be very useful. The reason we've kind of brought this forward with the SFIA 8 ones is there really is no better way for people to understand how some of the SFIA 8 skills will be used than to see them in the context of roles that might be out there. So for example, we've got new roles in here. People can see, oh, okay, I can see data engineering, that's where that's intended to be applied. So it helps in giving context to that. And one of the steps that Ian did mention was that we're going on to look at the design of documents. Now we have a suite of documents. They will be impacted by the changes we've talked about. So we are very interested in help in doing this, and that could be help in feedback on what we've got, but also any help in the sort of design of those. If people have got expertise or interest in that area, that would be very much appreciated. And then the question about where to find it, as of today, the skills, the material is up there on that. We've rechristened what was called Future SFIA on the website as SFIA 8 Beta, and you can find all the skills in the traditional browsing manner, the A to Z list, or the categories and subcategories, all the documents that are available to help you review. When I get around to recruiting a group of people to do proofreading, we've got the documents in Word, we've got the documents in Excel. It's worth saying that the Word documents are very rough and ready. They're not what we expect to see, which is partly the reason for asking for people who are interested in helping design them might be. So you can go to the website now and you can find that by going to SFIA 8 Beta. And please do so. It'd be great to see people on there straight away. Okay, that's me finished there, Grant.
Thank you very much, Peter. And it's an amazing amount of work that's gone into developing this SFIA 8 Beta. You've done an incredible amount of work in the design authority and the global community. It really is a big user-led global effort here. So it's fantastic. It's awesome. I might just check with Daniel. Were there any questions that came up in the questions and answers that you think we should bring up at this point to discuss?
Thanks, Grant. I think with the ones that have come through, I think we've adequately answered. I'm just seeing some new questions coming through on the Q&A now. I think actually the offers to help, which are very greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. In fact, that's one thing for us to highlight. There's been a lot of global effort and consultation and engagement in developing the beta, but we'd like even more to test it and check that all the content makes sense, is applicable, it suits and meets requirements that areas people might have. So please, feedback is what we're really keen to see at this point. So please test drive it, put it under its paces, try and figure out how you might use it and how things might change from SFIA 7 and whether that actually helps, works for you, and provide feedback as you can in this period until the middle of August. That would be very much appreciated. And thank you very much, Daniel and Matthew, for monitoring and answering a lot of those questions in the section. Any last comments, Peter or Ian, before we close the session?
Nothing from me. The only thing I would say is just to reiterate absolutely everything you've said, Grant. It is a community-led framework, and the supporting assets are community-led as well. So please do get involved. I think the questions that have been coming along and the way they've been answered online has been fantastic. But do get in contact and ask what you want to ask, and we will try and answer. Tell us what you want, and we will try and address those things.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, especially Peter. Awesome work. And if you want to recommend to your friends, there'll be another 2 of these sessions running, these webinars, for the opportunity to ask live questions. To remember where they are, they're staggered for a global time zones, 9 a.m. Sydney time, 9 a.m. London time, 9 a.m. Los Angeles time from now. So thank you very much, everyone. And we look forward to your further engagement with this beta and then the final product, which we'll see in September. Thank you.